turn the camera around and show you some of the basic tools that I bring along on every trip. In the car here, I still have some saws and picks and shovels and some extra things that I have along as well. But what I'm going to show you is really just sort of the fundamental tools for dry washing plaster gold. For plaster gold dry washing, I'm going to show you some of just the basics. These are the things that I really have to have every trip. And you know, I've probably got about a dozen things in the vehicle right now that I really don't have to bring with me, but I still end up bringing them just in case. So I'm going to show you those tools, and I want to wrap up this trip. Also, I was going to mention that, you know, of course I have food, I have water, I have warm clothes, I've got extra clothes, so I have a lot of other things I bring along every trip. Maps, claim information, campfire permit, you know, different bits of information that I have in the vehicle. What I'm going to show you is just basically the fundamental tools for going out somewhere and doing some dry washing.
All right, let's go down a rundown here of basic tools that that you would need if you wanted to go out and do some dry washing for gold. Whether you're in the mountains or the desert or in between, you got to assume it's going to be dry. It's going to be hopefully bone dry, so you're going to have to bring water along. And since you're bringing water along, you can't really do a lot of wet processing, so you're going to need to use a dry washer. And there are many dry washers on the market today, but well, there's a lot of choices. There's a lot of choices. So what this dry washer here is what they called, it's powered by a leaf blower. It's powered by a gasoline leaf blower, and it's a middle range dry washer. It's not too heavy to carry. I would say it's, as far as dry washers go, it's pretty darn good. I'm very happy with it. I've had it for several years. I've had to make a few little modifications that were not factory, but I think that's to be expected with most pieces of mining equipment. You make a little change here and there, or you got to update part of it. Anyway, this is a leaf blower powered dry washer, and it's a very nice machine. As you can see right here, I have a metal detector which works for fine gold. You know, it'll detect a fairly small piece of gold. It works rather well, but it doesn't go very deep, so you've got to be pretty shallow. Usually I use the metal detector when I'm actually dry washing down in my hole. After I remove the overburden, that's when the detector works best, because it doesn't go very deep, but it does work well for gold. I also use this machine for parks and for coin shooting and in trashy areas. It's got a good discriminator, so it's a multi-purpose machine. And again, I've had this one for probably 5 years. I like it a lot. I've used it enough to where I've become comfortable with it, which is probably one of the biggest things with detectors. Okay, I've got always have along a couple extra 5-gallon buckets. Here's a 1/4-inch classifier screen, gloves, hand tools, various hand tools. I've got some knee pads in here. I've got a small sledgehammer, chisel for roots. Those are mainly for roots and primarily roots. Long rake, long-handled rake works great for as a classifier. You can rake off the larger rocks and move the material around. There's a long digging bar. That's a pretty heavy bar. It's very helpful. I use that a lot to break up the earth, to widen the hole, deepen the hole. Also to pry rocks out of the way and things of that nature. Here's a fine detail rake. I think it's often called a landscaping rake. I use that fairly often. Again, it's a classifier. It's a classifier. Really, what you have here are three different classifiers. I've got the cultivator, which I've had to change and put on my own handle because I destroyed several handles. This is a cultivator, and basically it's a heavy-duty classifier. You can rake the rocks away so you don't have to run them through your machine. The machine has a grizzly on it here, so it'll keep out the larger rocks, but you don't want to beat your machine up, so you use this to get as a classifier to rake the rocks and break up the earth and move it around and break up the dirt clods and things like that. And then you can also have this rake here to use as a classifier, and then this one works the same way, except that usually I'm using that fine rake before I vacuum, and that helps a lot. That's a real key tool. If you're going to vacuum your hole, I'll show you the gas vacuum in just a moment, but if you're going to be using the vacuum, you use this little fine rake first, and you classify a lot of that. You know, what is that? 3/4 of an inch, ½ inch. You get those stones out of the way so you can vacuum with a lot greater ease. Because vacuuming dirt out here is kind of a tricky thing in itself. So this is really handy when you got down at the bottom of your hole and you want to rake before you vacuum. That's most of the time, that's when I'm using that little guy there. Standard shovel, long handle shovel. I also have a short handle shovel, a long and a very short, small little shovel. But I'm just trying to show you the basic stuff, the basic things. These are the things I use all the time. The other things, the small picks, the extra shovels and all that type of thing, a lot of times I don't end up using those. So this is kind of just the things I use all the time. Here's a small pick. Pruning shears for roots. Smaller pruners, again for smaller roots. Hat, always bring a hat, sun protection. You can see there's a long, heavy-duty hose that connects the leaf blower to the dry washer, and that's a pretty heavy-duty hose. I think it's made for that. I think it actually is made by mining equipment outfitters. I'm not sure, but anyway, the hose, I bought the dry washer and the hose for somewhere around $700. This particular machine right here, I think, is about the same. I think that's about a $700 detector. I bring along gasoline. This is pre-mixed. That's 2 gallons of gasoline right there. That'll last quite a while. So usually I don't bring more than that. Sometimes if it's a long trip, I'll bring an extra 2-gallon jug of unmixed gasoline, and so I can mix it as I need it. But there's 2 gallons of gasoline right there, which is pre-mixed. I always bring along water. Depends on the length of the trip. A short trip like this, that's a 5-gallon, that's a 6-gallon jug right there. So that'll usually be plenty of water for just sample panning, for just prospecting and panning. Usually I only use maybe 2 to 3 gallons of water, and you know, because I'm not panning, I'm not out here to pan for gold. I'm out here just to sample and then run the dry washer, run the machine as much as I can. So there's water, and then for getting to the water now, we got a panning kit. I've got a panning kit here. A lot of times, as you've seen, I just use a large pan, and I pan with a smaller pan in the larger pan, and that way I don't need to use as much water. But I do have this tub, which I can empty out, and I can use that tub as my panning tub. If you have plenty of water, hey, that's great. It's nice to, if you do have extra water, it's nice to be able to pan with a little extra water. It doesn't get so soupy. It's easier. It's less likely to suspend the gold, so you're less likely to lose gold that way. You can see I also have jet dry. In the panning kit, I have snuffer bottles, I have digital scale, I have small Ziploc bags, I have larger sample bags, I have a whole lot of different things in the panning kit there. Magnifier, black sand magnet, various other little bottles like prescription bottles for putting unusual stones that I find, things of that nature. So there's a lot of different stuff in the panning kit there, but primarily it is jet dry. It's several different pans. Usually I have a fourth pan. I loaned that out to somebody. I got to get my fourth pan back. Fishnet pans, the jet dry snuffer bottle. That's the basics. This right here is a gasoline vacuum that I used to use for the dry washer, but I had a problem with it, so now it's been repaired, but I use that as my gasoline powered vacuum. And you can see the hose. It's a fantastic vacuuming device. Works really well. You get down in the holes. It also works really well sometimes for prospecting. You want to sample an area, you want to walk up a gully, and I'm going to show you in a video here to come in the future. I'm going to show you some work I do with the vacuum as a sampling tool. It also works well when you get down to the bottom of the hole and you want to clean out all everything in the hole. You use a small detail rake and rake all the stones out of the way so that you can get in there and you can get all the cracks and crannies and clean them out with the gas vacuum. It's a very neat tool to have along. And so that's a rundown. That's a rundown there of sort of a basic dry washing for gold kit. It's a pretty complete kit for everything that you would need. Hand tools, gloves, all the way from the dry washer down to the panning tub and all that. There you go. So thanks for watching, and I hope that you found that helpful.
And we'll see you next time.